the very real prospect of a new world order. The new world order does not mean surrendering our national sovereignty or forfeiting our interests. He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial. How can I convince you when you're eager to hear? You turn your heart away from me each time that I've gone here. Your eyes refuse to meet with mine, they glance away in fear. Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show? My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something. We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. Blinded by the light. He is the free American Clay Douglas. Catch the Green American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger will inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to down the moon down to the sky and up the sun. For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8631.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. I am your host. I am Clay Douglas. My guest today is Gerald Rogers, and Gerald's got a website at geraldrogers.com. Welcome, Gerald. How are you?
I am so amazing today. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks, Buck.
Well, I like your website. I was just looking at the header on it. Be the conscious creator of your life. You have one life to live. Live big. And you've got in the little sidebar there, it says passion, purpose, and profit. I'm particularly interested in the profit part, but
absolutely.
You are an author, you're a speaker, and you say you're a breakthrough mentor. My mission is to empower individuals to be conscious creators in their life, to awaken their purpose, to step into their divine, authentic power, to take full accountability for the results in their life, and to consciously design the future they want to have. You know, I find that pretty interesting because for pretty much 50 years, I have lived whatever life I wanted to live. I became a publisher. I became a talk show host. I became an author. And people have asked me, well, what's it take to be a writer, Clay? I said, well, just one thing. Yeah, right. But I believe that never been a big fan of organized religion. Believe in God, but if you're omniscient and omnipotent, and you're the only one of your kind in the universe, you got to be bored. So what do? You create us, spark of your divinity that we call a soul or a conscience or ESP. And you sit back, Shakespeare said, the whole world is a stage, and you sit back of your God behind your eyes and my eyes, and we're given free will, and he says, well, let's see what they can do with it. Do I have a fairly accurate view on tell me about your concept of life?
I love that. You know, I've never been God, so I'm not exactly sure what goes through his mind, but I have to imagine sometimes he watches us and the way that we live, and he scratches his head and he's like, what have I done? Because the reality is so many people, the majority of people, they live unconsciously. They're not aware of their power. They're not aware of, you know, the free choice and agency that they have to create life. I believe that every one of us has this amazing gift where we really do have the ability, we have the choice to design and to live the life we want. And most people surrender that to this idea that they need to live up to other people's expectations, or they need to, you know, live up to their parents' expectations for them, and or their teachers or their religion, whatever expectations they're surrendering themselves to, and they give up that very power that God gave them to live the life they want. And so most people live, you know, as they say, in lives of quiet desperation, and they go to their graves, you know, having never really lived at all. And so my belief is that when we awaken and when we step fully into this conscious experience of life, it's incredible, it's amazing, and just like you were talking about your journey, what does it take to be a writer? Well, it's a decision, right? You just decide to do it. You just decide, this is the life I want, and you start doing it. And somehow when we make a bold, courageous decision based on our soul's highest good and our highest purpose, then things work out. So it's, you know, I do wonder sometimes, like, God thinks when he looks down on us, but I think he loves us compassionately, and you know, sometimes is probably a little bit sorrowful and maybe even a little embarrassed about the decisions we make, but he gives us our choice, and I think that's the greatest gift that he gives us.
Well, whether it's a gift or a curse, I'm not sure. He gave us free will, so we can really decide whether we want to be good or evil. I mean, you know, it's really a conscious choice. Do you want to do good for people, or do you want to try to steal, rob, hurt, control, rule? You know, we've got a really choice here, and if you come to that realization, then you know, the next question is, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about that idea is, I don't think anyone chooses to do evil. I believe that everyone is choosing to do what they believe is good. I actually, I was thinking about this yesterday. I saw this quote that said, I believe that every choice that I've made has been in alignment with the will of God. Do you know who said that? It was Adolf Hitler. Like, he believed that everything that he was doing was righteous and was what God wanted him to do. And it's so fascinating how our brains work, because somehow our brains validate, like, these terrible, terrible choices and make them seem right. And it's crazy, because I believe that, you know, at the time we're born, we're starting to be implanted with these limiting beliefs and these lies and these distortions, and when people live through those distortions, their whole world is distorted in alignment with. So even people that are doing things that seem evil to everyone else, for some reason they have to justify it in their own mind, and it's really fascinating watching people do that. But it is true. Like, we all have a choice in terms of what makes us happy and what makes us, you know, thrive, and in some ways, like, I can't judge anyone else's life, because it's just like, I've never been in their shoe. I can't understand how they're making that decision, but obviously they're making those decisions, doing the best they can with where they're at, you know?
Well, Hitler was a brilliant man. And when you really study it, and I study history, I study political science, I study divinity. I'm on the board of directors of Timothy Bible College, so I really spent a lot of time trying to analyze what's happening, especially what's happening in the United States now. And Hitler tried to protect the German people. He was loved by the German people, and he tried to prevent the communists from taking over and doing the same thing that they did in Russia, where they killed 60 million Russians, white Christian Russians, a lot of them, and they simply killed them. They put them in concentration camps. They starved them to death. Hitler didn't want to see that to happen to the German people, and that led to war. Now, that don't mean the war was right. Doesn't mean that everybody that was on our side was right. I mean, we did bomb Dresden. That was a civilian population. We did bomb Nagasaki, civilian population. We did bomb Hiroshima, civilian population. So there's been a lot more people killed in this century than at any time before in history, and most of them have been killed by their own governments.
Yeah, and it's interesting how much, I mean, we do this as individuals too, but as countries, like, we completely whitewash our history. But we do this with our own mistakes. Anytime we make a mistake, for some reason, the way that our brains are wired is we have to be the heroes of our own story. And so when we make a mistake, when we do something and we're like telling someone about what happened, we always make ourselves seem like the good guy, right? And we step into what I believe is like a victimhood mentality. And you'll notice this when say, for instance, someone goes through a divorce and they're telling all their friends like what happened. It always sounds like the other person is such a terrible, horrible, human, excuse for a human being. But you talk to the other person and it's just the opposite, just because it's so easy for us to step into that victimhood where we're blaming the other person and we're blaming, the outside situations, we're blaming the government, all these things. And the challenge is there's no power in being a victim. As long as we're constantly putting the blame outside of us, then we have no power to take control and to change it, because, I mean, essentially the whole victimhood mentality is, there's nothing I can do because it's someone else's fault. But once we take accountability, I can see my role, I can see what I could have done to, I chose into this, I can see, I can see the mistake, and we can take really accountability for it, then all of a sudden the shift happens. But that's, I think, the fundamental core biggest challenge that we face as a country is so few people know how to take authentic accountability and how to be a conscious creator. And that's why, it's very, you can't find very many politicians at all that will actually take accountability for what's going on. They completely ignore the challenges, and they have to focus on, what they think is right, and they pass the buck and point, the finger at the other party, and I mean, that's true in politics, it's true in individual relationships, it's true in business, and the shift that needs to happen both culturally and individually is for us to step into the creator that says, wow, I've created the life that I'm living right now, and there's things that I don't like about it, but I created it. And in understanding our role in the creating, whether it be in our financial situation, when we can see how we pick the future. But as long as we're believing that someone else's fault led us to this moment, then we'll never be able to shift that. And I think that's, once again, true whether, someone's overweight and they're unhealthy. And it's also same in terms of the government, who's, spending $5 billion a day, more than they're making, right? It's crazy in terms of, the lack of intentional accountability that we take. So,
well, I do have some excuses for the American people. We're raised on television, and they don't call television programming for nothing.
Yeah. This is true.
You know, I in my one of my publishers' column up on my website, I said, as Willie Nelson, one of our great American heroes, said, "My heroes have always been cowboys." And I guess I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Texan. I still ride my steel horse, wearing a cowboy hat, not a helmet. And I said, you know, so my heroes have always been cowboys, but I do not hate Indians. You know, my brothers, our fathers, grandfathers, all veterans fought the Germans, the Chinese, the Vietnamese, the Russians, the Iraqis, the Afghans, the Jews, but we should recognize we're all victims of our own criminal controllers, our own governments, and we should find a way to work together without hate or fear. Now, one of the things that you talk about, talking about on your page here, is marriage. You've got some suggestions for marriage. I believe the article was tips for creating an epic marriage.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me, I was reading this, that you know, I lost 10 years ago. I lost my marriage. I lost my wife. You know, that wasn't the first time. I figured I reached you about 40 years too late. I think they've even done songs about me. You know, right here in Texas. All my exes live in Texas. But I guess my ex-wife found someone else and planning on getting married here in a few weeks. But she sent me a letter, and in reading that, it was just like what you said. I mean, we were together for 24 years, and she listed all of the problems I had, but she was there right beside me. She was there right beside me, so we did all the wrong things together.
Yeah.
All it would have taken is for her to say, "Hey, Clay, let's try to do things this way." Instead, people find fault. Well, you know, Clay thinks we ought to legalize marijuana. Yeah, damn right I do. Yes, sir. I don't believe in putting people in jail for something they got in their pocket or something they put in their body. I don't believe in that. I think it's wrong. But people find what is wrong with you, or what is wrong with their marriage, rather than trying to figure out a way to fix it. And I'll be the first to tell you there's something wrong with the way our government's run. It's because we're being run more in a communistic fashion. Every plank on the Communist Manifesto intact in America today, and nobody knows what communism is.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we find the answers? I mean, the answers are, you know, a quick aside here. In the Bible, Jesus tells you that you can do what I do and more. Mm-hmm. So I think he's telling us that God is within us. We don't need a preacher. We don't need a priest. We don't need a rabbi to tell us right from wrong. We really know right from wrong, and we can make the decisions about the direction we want to go in our life. And other people that have been on my show have suggested that the more positive you are, the more you love, the more positive your vibrations are. And actually, that's kind of what love is, your level of vibrational energy. The more you love, the more you attract that type of feeling or people around you. The more positive you are, the more positive the people that show up in your life. Is that a little too esoteric, or are you reaching some of the same conclusions?
I fully believe that, just not only from what I've read and studied in all these different, not only spiritual traditions, but also metaphysical, studies and that, but also in my own life. Like I look at my life right now, and I've really focused on intentionally being in a high vibration state, being in a space of positivity and really being aware of my thoughts. And I look at my life and I do not have a single negative relationship in my life. I don't. Like, every relationship that I have, whether it be with my kids, with my family, even with my ex-wife, to my friends, to my clients, to my sphere of influence, everyone is a very positive, healthy relationship, one that helps me to thrive. And I notice that every once in a while, a negative, person will, like, try to step into my life, but it's like automatically they are released, like because our frequencies don't match. And I believe that there's a real truth to that, how we always attract those things that are at the same vibration and frequency of where we're at subconsciously. Is that an easy thing to be able to control in our life? And I don't think it's hard. I think it takes time, and I think it takes work, and I think it takes reprogramming. I think it takes a lot of conscious awareness and being able to look at, okay, what are the thoughts that are going on beneath the surface? What are the beliefs that I have? And constantly shifting those beliefs and working to realign those with the positive beliefs that are in alignment with what we want to create. But this whole idea of being conscious creators and consciously designing the life that we want, it's all about identifying, okay, where is it that I want to go? What is the type of relationship I want to have? We can look at all of the crap from the past and everything that we've experienced. And, like, for instance, for me, when that, so I went through a divorce about a year ago. I had been married for 16 years, this amazing goddess. I really was so blessed to be able to spend those years with her, and there just came a time where, she was done with her journey with me, and like, it was really hard for me, like, it was brutal, but rather than stepping into victimhood, I just really got to look at, okay, well, great, what did I learn? How did I gain, from this experience? How can I move on? How can I create something? How can I support her on her journey? How can I be in a space of love for this being that has journeyed with me so long, and that I get to continue to share a journey with as parents of our kids? And when I was able to look at, okay, what was my role in this marriage? What was my role in creating this? And I could see the areas where my beliefs were not in alignment with the type of relationship I want to have. And I could see all of the areas where I had fallen short in being the man that I wanted to be and I chose to be. And I could really look at them and say, okay, well, I can see how some things were, I was lacking in terms of my ability to show up in my masculinity. I was lacking in terms of my ability to show up authentically and powerfully. I was lacking in terms of my ability and understanding of how to nurture and how to care for her as a woman and how to empower her in that space. I was lacking in terms of all these limited beliefs that I had adopted, growing up with my mom, and then stepping into being a pleaser. Like, all of these things, I could really look at them honestly and say, wow, I can see how believing what I did caused me to act in a certain way, and it caused me to get this result that I don't want. And my choice was simply, okay, this is where I'm at. What do I want to create moving forward? And through that awareness, I got to really see some, the type of epic relationship that I advocate is one where there is deep emotional, physical, intellectual connection, this really deep space of having this journey with another human being where it's built on love and connection and trust and true intimacy. And through my journey, I've discovered, the keys to making that happen, but most fundamentally, you can't do the right actions unless you have the right thoughts. And so a lot of the work that I do is helping people align their subconscious beliefs with their conscious desires so the actions are natural and easy. And then that's how we activate this law of attraction to our life. This is how we activate bringing the right people and the right circumstances, right opportunities into our life that are in alignment with what we want to create. The conscious lifestyle design requires us to, number one, define where do we want to go. Number two, to define, okay, what do we need to do to get there? And number three, what do we need to believe? What do we need to be in order to take those actions? And then we focus on the being part. And when we focus on the being part, the actions come easily and the results are natural and instinctive. Does that make sense?
Well, kind of, but obviously you haven't been on too many dating sites.
No, it's true. I haven't done online dating. I love hearing stories from people that do online dating. For whatever reason, I've been blessed, and I just attract these amazing people that come into my life, and I haven't had to go there. But I totally know there's a lot of strange, unconscious people on dating sites.
There are, you know. I mean, basically, I because I do radio and because I write most of the time, I spend most of my time at the computer. I'm not out, and I'm not out in public that much. When I do go out in public, I'm either on stage or behind a booth somewhere, so I don't really have any reaction. So after my divorce 10 years ago, I got on some dating sites, but there's nobody real. There's very few people are real. I mean, you know, maybe after 10 years, I've met one or two real people that turned out to be pretty good. But the majority, again, people are, you mentioned reprogramming, and I really think that's something that we need to do as a society, because think about the negativity that you see when you turn on the TV. I mean, you're watching people kill each other, you're watching people murder each other, you're watching people breaking up, and it's been that way. I can remember 50 years ago or more, going home and from school, and my grandmother would say, George and Ellen are getting a divorce. Who's George and Ellen, I don't know any George and Ellen. What are you talking about? As the world turns. So I'm not a very big fan of television.
Yeah, me neither. I like you were saying, I choose to program myself rather than to have my brain program. And it's interesting. Sometimes we blame, the media for the program that they do, and we blame the TV for, not really providing, good news and for being so sensationalist. But on the other hand, it's like, I don't think we realize, like, the purpose of the news is to make money. That's why they're there. Their only purpose is to make money, and so they have to sensationalize. They have to find the most, outrageous stories. They have to simplify. They have to objectify to speak the things that the audience is wanting, and they're just measuring ratings. That's all. That's the objective. It's a business. And we look at it like, well, why don't they have more stories of substance? Why don't they have more positive stories? For whatever reason, as a culture, we're saying this is what we want. We want to hear about, the teenage boy that murdered his parents, right? We want to hear about, the story of the school bombing threat, right? And so all of the attention is drawn there because of the culture. We're fascinated by that, and we're gripped by that. And I don't know if we can blame the media. It's just the way that they make money. But it's kind of ironic that we think that that's a reliable source for us to gain information about the world, right? Because their purpose isn't to educate us. It isn't to inspire us. It isn't to lead us to be better people. It isn't to, provide really objective, viewpoints. It's to make money. And when we realize that, then we can say, oh, okay, I can see why they're choosing the choice of it to do, and does it work for me? For me, I haven't watched TV in a long time, like years, and the reason is because I don't like the programming. It doesn't work for me in my life. It doesn't match what I'm trying to create, and so I focus on, okay, where can I get the stories? How can I have objective conversations with people that are intelligent and are educated about this? How can I develop my own opinion on different issues? And there's certain issues that I'm drawn to and other issues that I'm not. But when we kind of allow the media to be whatever it is and see it for what it is, then we then we can realize, oh, okay, I choose to be responsible for my own programming in my brain, right? But it's interesting in the culture how much we buy into other people's opinions or influence. I think that we shouldn't allow influence us. And I'm sure you see that a lot in the interview and the work that you do from your perspective, huh, Clay?
It's interesting. I mean, I've got them in the chat room. Trolls come in the chat room all the time, telling me what a bad job I'm doing. It's the people have been dumbed down. I mean, I get comments on it. Our IQ levels are dropping, and they're discovering that people are being dosed on aluminum, trace elements that are being put into our atmosphere, and that's leading to dementia. It's leading to Alzheimer's, things like that. Now you're out there, you're speaking, you're going to events. What are you finding? Is there something wrong with people? Are people being influenced by TV? Is there maybe it's genetically modified foods? I mean, we're being fed foods that rats won't eat that are genetically modified. What's wrong with people? I mean, how it's difficult to build something positive if you're dealing with people that have no idea what positive is.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I realize and recognize that I kind of live in a bubble, right? I do these events and seminars, and most of my world is surrounded by, people that are coming to my events, and they're coming because they want a better life. They want to be inspired. They want to be empowered. My events are centered around teaching them to be a conscious creator, so they step into accountability, and they're really focused on making their life better. They're really focused on making a contribution. So that's all I see, is I see people that are wanting to be the very best they can be, and I realize that that's not the majority of the population. The majority of the population wouldn't be the type of person I go to a weekend seminar for 3 days just to face their limiting beliefs and break through those and really step into shifting their experience in their health and their body and their relationships and money. Like, most people don't go there, but that's the population that I'm surrounded. And what I can tell you is there's a cry and a hunger for every person to become better, right? There's a cry that says, oh my gosh, my life isn't working and I want something more in my life. And we all, every one of us experiences areas in our life that's painful. The challenge is when people become comfortable with mediocrity, when they become comfortable in playing the role of the victim, then they don't want to change, and that's the hardest space to be in, right? If someone is comfortable blaming the government for their financial problems, blaming their boss, blaming their spouse for their unhappiness, if they're comfortable in being in that space of eating really unhealthy, unconscious foods, then they stay stuck. It's our comfort zone that keeps us stuck. So I love working with people that are frustrated in their life. I love working with people that are saying, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of being broke. I'm tired of being in a hurting relationship, and I want something more. And when they're uncomfortable with that, then they step into a space of power in their life. And I feel super blessed because I get to be around those people. And for me personally, I see a huge amount of hope. Even though I know that as a culture there's a lot of problems, a lot of challenges we deal with, I also know that at their core, most people are really good and they're really genuine and they really want to make a difference. They really want to help other people be happy. They want to live on purpose. They want to live a life of meaning. They want to live, passionately and in a way that is fulfilling and meaningful. And most people just simply have not been given the tools because they're living in this unconscious pattern of being a reactor versus the creator. But I believe, I'm one of those that believes that at the heart, every person is amazing and every person has sincere desires to do good, and everyone has that, and every one of us, myself included, has broken limiting beliefs that sabotage us sometimes. And some people buy more into those things and do things that are hurting them and hurting other people, and they may or may not realize it. But I kind of look at it this way, taking like a specific example for someone, and this is kind of just an example that comes to mind. Like, why does someone smoke, right? Why does someone take something into their body that, number one, doesn't taste good, but also hurts their body and causes them to die early? And they know that. They know that it's hurting their body, and it's like, why would someone do that? Like, it consciously doesn't make any sense at all. But the challenge is for people, and whether it's that addiction or someone's addicted to porn or someone's addicted to, to television or someone's addicted to, Doritos, whatever the addiction is, like when we're doing things that are unhealthy to ourselves or unhealthy to others, it always comes through a subconscious need to fill a healthy desire, but we do it in an unhealthy way, right? So someone that smokes, what are they really looking for? Well, they're looking for the ability to relax. They're looking for this connection. They're looking for perhaps an image. They're looking for an experience where they're in a social setting. They're looking for, the chemicals that the cigarette provides. And those are all really, really healthy desires, but because of their subconscious beliefs, they're trying to meet those things in an unhealthy way. And so, like, my belief is all of us have really strong, good natures, but our subconscious living beliefs and the stories that we have cause us to sabotage the results in our life and to do unhealthy and unconscious things that ultimately lead to pain if we don't shift those things and focus on filling those needs in healthy ways. And that was kind of a long rant on your question, but I believe that there's a lot that's right in the country. I believe that there's a lot of amazing people, a lot of miracles, a lot of really inspiring stories around us all the time. But when our focus is turned to what's wrong, then that's all that we see. And so, as a culture, what do we get to do? We get to learn how to step into focusing on, okay, what's right? What do I want? And how do I really create what I want in a healthy way? Does it make sense?
It makes sense. It makes sense. Do you take into allowance or account that there are really people out there, psychological operations, that and whole organizations that are very well funded to control what we think? I mean, this is really what television is, to control what we think, to present an image. For you to be successful, you got to be driving a Ferrari and smoking cigarettes. I mean, this is we're talking about the Edward Bernays culture made it okay for women to smoke. And I've always wondered. You mentioned smoking. I've always wondered about that. I've always been kind of called the loner. I'm not very subject to peer pressure. I don't have, I don't hang out in groups or hang out in crowds of certain people, so I'm not moved by the peer pressure. And I don't know why would anybody smoke? I mean, I've smoked, I've tried everything just to see what it's like, but frankly, didn't do anything. I mean, if you're going to smoke something, you might as well smoke pot. Nobody dies from that. 100,000 people a year die from smoking cigarettes.
Yeah. But that's this interesting question. Is like, so what gets people to buy into those stories? And are there organizations that are promoting these things and conspiring and manipulating? And of course there are, right? I mean, all of these companies that are driven by profit, they're putting on marketing. And I saw a stat once that says every day the average person encounters anywhere from 3,500 to 5,000 marketing messages. Everywhere from the billboards to the signs to the commercials to the logos, the branding clothes. Like, there's marketing messages all over the place. And at the core, what is marketing? marketing has one purpose and one purpose only. Marketing's purpose is to make you unsatisfied about your life, to make you feel like you need something more in order to be happy, in order to be whole, in order to be complete. And so, say the marketing from a car company, their goal is to say, hey, the car I'm driving isn't enough. Like, if I had that car, then I'd be okay. Then I'd be experience of respect, or then I'd be sexy. Then I'd be happy. Whatever the message is, and the same's true with the tobacco marketing, right? I mean, same's true with marketing for the porn companies. The same's true with marketing for everyone, and the government's marketing, and like even in some way our parents are marketing. They're trying to influence the way that we think and the way that we behave, because they're trying to get us to believe something that supports what they want. And so you look at the marketing from, say, a tobacco company. Their mission with that marketing is to make you believe that sexing is that tobacco is sexy, tobacco is cool, tobacco is going to help you feel socially connected. Tobacco is going to give you all these things, and is it based on a lie? Of course it is, right? But for them, that marketing is driven because their company is built on, hey, we need to make money. This is how we make money. And so, what do we need the audience to believe in order for us to drive a profit? And I don't know if we can blame the companies for putting out that marketing. I don't know if we can. I mean, their mission, their goal, the purpose of the business is to make money, and so that's how they do it. I think what's a more healthy perspective is looking at, okay, how are we as the audience, how are we as the consumers, how are we as the individuals going to choose to receive that information? And when we're just allowing ourselves to be unconsciously programmed by all of these different forces and influences around us, and we allow ourselves to be, zombies that are just like responding to these things, and then it becomes very easy to buy into these aspects of marketing that make us crave or make us desire these things that are ultimately unhealthy and that do not create what we want in the long term. But when we become conscious and say, wow, well, what do I really want? What is the truth? Do I really want this experience? That, I don't know why we're talking so much about smoking, but it's an interesting example of how this works. Do I really want, what that's going to do to my body? Do I really want to smell that way? Do I really want that experience? Do I really want to wear that label of being a smoker? No, that doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, as a conscious creator, how do I make sure that I don't buy into that, right? And this whole idea of, vibrations that we started this conversation with is when you're living your life in a certain vibration, a certain frequency, when you're living your life at a certain intention, that attention, there's no desire, there's no draw, there's no connection, there's no magnetic pull towards it. Like for me, I've never in my life have I even remotely been interested or tempted to smoke, because I'm like, why the hell would I do that? Like that makes zero sense at all. But that's just because it hasn't ever matched the frequency or vibration of where I'm at and what I'm wanting to create. And I want to be clear, I'm not judging those that smoke, right? And if there's someone that's listening that smokes, there's no judgment at all. I'm just using this and illustrating it as how we all have these unhealthy patterns that we step into and buy into. And whether you smoke, whether you drink, whether you look at porn, whether you spend too much money on whatever whatever it is it serving you? Is it working for you what you want to create with your life? If it is, great, keep doing it. But if it's not, then be a conscious creator and say, wow, what would serve me better in a healthy way? What is the need that I'm trying to meet with it? And how can I step out of, being programmed by all of these influences that are trying to send these marketing messages that say, I need those things in order to be okay? How can I step into this role of being a conscious creator and filling those needs in a really meaningful, healthy way that I choose, independent of whatever messages I'm receiving.
Well, there's something that's even more disturbing to me in this vein of thought, in this line of thought here, than cigarettes. And that's the whole pharmaceutical. Now, 25, 30 years ago, you couldn't advertise pharmaceuticals on television. They wouldn't allow that. And now every other commercial on a Super Bowl is about some kind of drug. And I've looked at the markups on the drugs. There's like a 2,000% markup on many of these drugs, the Luvox, the Valium, the whatever. I don't even know what the names are. They make up a name and start. And the first half of the commercial, 30 seconds in the commercial, it tells you how this drug could kill you, what it could do to you. I just sit there and kind of scratch my head and say, why would anybody take one of these? Why would anybody buy this?
And what I think that's so interesting. I'm so fascinated by that too, and it's interesting too because once again, when we look at the purpose of the pharmaceutical company, their goal is to make money, and they do that in a very effective way. But the goal of the pharmaceutical company isn't, and this is what's important. It's not to heal you. If they heal you, they don't make any more money.
That's
the
right.
goal of those drugs is to make it so that you feel better without getting healed, so that you maintain that. And I've heard so many examples of actual, medications and alternative therapies and these medications that actually heal the problem, and the pharmaceutical companies will come in and buy that up and take it off the market so that their drug, which is, some form of addiction that allows the person to be maintained. I know of, cures for diabetes. I know of all of these different things that have been out there, and the pharmaceutical companies, they don't want it cured because that ruins the profit, right? And so they put out these other drugs on the market that do that. And once again, there's certain drugs, there's certain pharmaceuticals that serve a need and serve a purpose and are really meaningful and support people. But the main thing to look at is that we're always looking for the quick fix. We're always looking for the surface level solution rather than digging deep and asking, okay, what's the core root to what's going on? How can I really resolve the real emotional and physical? How can I change my lifestyle to support what I want? Instead of looking at that, what can I take? What's the magic pill I can take so that I don't feel pain right now, rather than addressing, okay, what's actually causing the pain? And, we kind of have stepped into living in a quick fix culture, and that quick fix culture keeps us in hostage. It keeps us in prison and held captive by these solutions that will never, ever, ever solve the real root problem. And I think, once again, for each of us stepping into being a content creator, it's like, okay, how can I take accountability for, okay, how did I get here? What's the real solution that I can find? How can I, heal this problem rather than cover it up with a layer of frosting, and just pretend it doesn't exist.
One of the prime examples, I think, and you made mention of this, they don't want you to get well. If you're well, I'll use myself for an example. I don't get sick. I don't take vaccinations. I don't take medications. I don't get sick. Every now and then, if I'm in an area where I can do it without worrying about going to prison, I like to smoke a little marijuana. I think that's God's gift to us. So that was the plant of renown they talked about in the Bible. I financed Jack Harrow while he wrote the book Emperor Wears No Clothes, and he really analyzed it. He said, cannabis can save the world, and it could. It really could when you start researching it. It was our #1 cash crop in the 30s. before they gave Hearst that castle and the money to buy that castle to demonize it. And another gentleman I've had on my show, he has a website called PhoenixTears.com, and he discovered, a Canadian that discovered you could cure cancer with the THC or the CBD in the cannabis plant. And we got a cancer industry here, cancer research, billions of dollars go into cancer research. They've never found a cure, but some doctors have found a cure using cannabis, using THC, using baking soda. Baking soda killed breast cancer. You know, it was so simple, and yet we've got a whole industry, $1 billion industry built up around it. Chemotherapy costs thousands of dollars. You're spending thousands of dollars to try to cure yourself of a little bit of mold. They don't want to cure it. And if you do cure it, people like Drs. Brzezinski are raked over the coals. They're taken to courts. They're trying to stop them from curing cancer. And I've told people, many years ago, after I saw what happened at Waco, I started this radio show in my Free American magazine because I swore I would never just sit back and watch something like that happen again on TV without trying to do something. And I've been demonized and put down for it ever since. I've told people I started the militias around the country. You know, what part of the Second Amendment don't you understand? The militia is the people of this country. Every able-bodied male between the ages of 18 and 45, according to U.S. code, can be called up by the governor to serve in the militia, to help out in case of emergencies. And I told people, you need, I believe you need to take your weapon out, clean it, load it, and shoot the damn TV. You'd be a lot better off. And all of these commercials for these, well, be sure to check with your doctor to see if you're healthy enough for sex before you take Viagra. Excuse me. We got a few 100,000 years of history of sex. We didn't need a doctor to tell us whether we're healthy enough for it.
Yeah, and I see that a lot. How just a lot of time we're looking for, once again, that victim mentality is looking for ways to abdicate responsibility by relying on someone else's opinion, right? And it's so fascinating how addicted we are to having other people tell us what to do, what's right and what's wrong, and that's ultimately like greatest challenge we face. As long as we're relying on someone else's opinion for our life, we've become hostage to it, and so it requires us to really trust ourselves and say, okay, what's right for me? What really supports me? What really are the things that help me to step into creating the life I want? And when we do that, then all of a sudden, that's where really meaningful change comes from. And that's like the main focus of, my workshops and seminars, even my personal coaching that I do with clients. It's helping them not only get clear on where they want to go in the future and what that looks like and what the strategies are to take that, but ultimately helping them get down to this very basic nitty-gritty details of realizing that they have this intuitive capacity inside of them to know what supports them in creating that and what doesn't. And they don't, even my goal and my mission is to get my clients to the point where they don't need my advice. They don't need my support. They are completely independent. And that's one of the differences, for instance, when I do relationship coaching. Like I'm kind of, I know that there's good counselors out there. I know that there's good, marriage psychologists out there and stuff. think that they're far and few between, and they kind of have to step into the same role as most most therapists. Like, it's kind of the same as the pharmaceutical companies, where their goal isn't to solve your problem. They have to extend the problem. Once they solve your problem, then they lose the client, right? And so they have completely ineffective methods of actually solving the problem, and they just want to talk about it and dig it up and keep it. So I know people. It's really interesting. I know people that go to therapists and psychologists, and they've been going for 10 years, and they're still dealing with the issues. And then they come to one of my weekend events, and like all of a sudden the problem's gone, and they're like, oh my gosh, like I've wasted 10 years, trying to deal with this through traditional therapy and psychologists, when that's all just surface level stuff. And when we learn how to really get down to the core roots and pull out the roots of the weeds, and then we can plant the new healthy plants and nourish those in healthy ways. So I think all, as we've had this whole conversation, it all circles back down to this choice that each of us has. The choice that says, I am responsible for the results of my life. And I am responsible for the crap that I've created in my life, and I'm responsible for the great things that happen in my life. And I'm responsible for the past, I'm responsible for the future. What is the future that I want, and how can I take control of the steering wheel in my life? What is it that I'm actually trying to steer to drive to? Most people don't know what their goals are. They don't know what they want their life to look like. They don't know what their purpose and mission is, because they spend too much time in the back seat of their own car, right? Rather than looking at the map and saying, well, what do I want to create? Where do I want to go in my life? Who do I want to be? What do I want my legacy to be? What do I want my relationships to look like? What do I want my health to look like? What do I want to have in terms of financially? And in order to create that, how do I take the steering wheel of my life and direct myself, day after day through the decisions I'm making to reach that? And for me, my firm belief is when each of us step into our full power of being a conscious creator, we do have the ability to have whatever we want. And I've seen people that have been suffering years and years, when they really kind of get down to the core and really step back into power and step back into the driver's seat, change is possible, and change is easy when we make the decision. But it's up to each of us, and this is where all of our responsibility lies, is to make that choice to be in the driver's seat of our own life, to take accountability for the results we have, and to step fully into this process of making decisions every day that put us in that higher vibration, that higher frequency, that space of belief and choice and possibility. And so for anyone that's listening right now, I guess my greatest invitation for you is to step boldly onto this journey of what I call living big, right? Really defining how do you want your life to be, and take the time to map that out and to make those decisions on a daily basis. And this is where the juice of life comes, right? This is where we find the real answers to the real solutions, to real problems that we're facing. And so I know our time's a little bit short, Clay, but I really want to acknowledge you for helping empower people and really helping them see different perspectives, and for everything that you do to invite inspiring guests on to help open up people's minds. And I really believe at the core, all of the change that we're looking for comes through a change in perspective. By being able to see things a little bit different, then we're able to see life and see other people and see ourselves in a new way that allows new possibilities to come in our life. And that's one of the gifts that you created for people, Clay, is this opportunity for them to see life through a new set of lenses. And in that space, hopefully those that are listening right now can look at their life and say, oh, I can see how I can begin to shift my life. I can see how I can have great awareness. I can see how I can, step out of the control and get out from under the thumb of these other influences that are trying to manipulate and direct my life. And I can see how I can step back into being fully empowered in my life. So I just want to thank you, Clay. Thank you for the
I
opportunity to be able
want to
to
thank
connect
you.
be with you.
You are presenting a positive picture here. We do have control. Hold on just a second.
News that mainstream media won't tell you. Are you frustrated with your elected politicians? Get the news behind the news at truthradio.com. At Truth Radio, you can listen live or listen to a large selection of archived programs on demand. Listen when you want to. Truthradio.com. The truth is out there. All you have to do is open your mind and listen.
All right, I wanted to thank you again, Gerald, because my shows this last week have featured people, women, men that have empowered themselves, that have overcome adversity, and they've done it with a positive attitude. You know, at probably no time in the past, we have the ability, we have the technology to really improve our lives, to solve the problems. And you got to get away from the negative programming. You need this, you need that. I ask myself, well, how did we exist? How did we exist 100 years ago? I mean, we formed this country 200 years ago with windmills and self-sufficient family farms and ranches spread across the country. I call it the Liberty Village concept. If you grow your own food, generate your own power, you don't need the governments, you don't need the corporations, you don't need the banks for anything. And, I can't move to the country. I got jobs here. Well, then turn your neighborhood into a self-sufficient family farm. Grow food, not grass, in the backyard. Put solar and wind generators on your roof, and quit paying the power companies. Quit taking the drugs. We don't need those drugs. Do what Colorado did. Legalize marijuana and treat your PSD, treat your cancer with the CDBs that you find in that cannabis plant. The answers are there. The laws may not be there. The will may not be there because your legislators, your politicians, they are being paid by people that are profiting off of your misery. And they don't want to, just like you pointed out, the doctors don't want to heal you. Then if you're well, you don't need money. You know, I was kind of excited when they passed medical marijuana, 20 states. One of them I was in, Arizona, and I thought, wow, this is pretty neat, man. Maybe for the first time in 45 years, I won't be a criminal anymore. But it turned out I couldn't qualify for medical marijuana because I wasn't sick. One of the reasons I'm not sick is I've been smoking it for 45 years. And I wrote books about that 45 years ago. But, Gerald, I know you got an event that you're at, and you're welcome back here anytime. I appreciate the work that you're doing, and before you go, I'd like to do one thing here. Give a few, and there's more on your website, of the tips for creating a epic marriage, because this to me, this impressed me. And you said, and I agree with you. Here's the advice I wish I would have had. Never stop courting, never stop dating, never ever take that woman for granted. When you ask her to marry you, you promise to be that man that would own her heart and to fiercely protect it. This is the most important and sacred treasure you will ever be entrusted with. She chose you. Never forget that, and never get lazy in your love. Protect your heart just as you committed to being the protector of her heart. You must guard your own with the same vigilance. Love yourself fully. Love the world openly, but there is a special place in your heart where no one must enter except your wife. Keep that space always ready to receive her and invite her in, and refuse to let anyone or anything else enter there. And fall in love over and over and over again. Now, Gerald, if you would tell people how they can. I've got your website up here. It's linked here. Tell people about your seminars, what you charge, what they need to do. The rest of the time's yours. Tell people.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And first off, I just want to acknowledge you, Clay, once again. Thank you for inviting me. And I want to acknowledge everyone that's listening to this, because just the fact that you're listening to this, that you're engaging in this conversation, that you're open to learn, that says a lot about you. And if you're interested in stepping more into being a powerful and conscious creator in your life, if you want to create more empowered, amazing relationships, whether you're in a relationship right now where you're feeling things are going pretty good and you just want to make them better, or if you're feeling stuck and frustrated and you're not having the type of emotional connection or physical intimacy that you desire, then my invitation is for you to join me on this journey and allow this to be the first of many opportunities for us to spend together. And I'm going to invite you to go to GeraldRogers.com. It's GeraldRogers.com. And go there, and I've got some free gifts that I'm going to give you. And one of the purposes and missions that I'm embarking on right now, ever since I went through divorce, and I had to look at, okay, what is it that creates thriving, healthy, epic marriages? And what did I do that sabotaged mine? I really had to look at that. And it was the day after my divorce that I made this post that ended up going viral and being shared by tens of millions of people around the world. And basically what that told me was all of us are crying for direction and hope in our relationships. And there's a lot of pain there. And I've invested my life over the last year in understanding, okay, how can I help people live those empowered, sacred, beautiful, intimate relationships they want? And so within the next month, I'm actually launching my book and putting my book out there that will really go into depth in terms of how do you create these meaningful changes in your relationship. So if you go to GeraldRogers.com, not only can you download that article that I wrote with the 20 specific points of how to do that, but I'll also keep you updated in terms of when the book is launched. And I'm always doing free things to train and teach people and help people live these inspired and conscious lives. And there's a bunch of other bonuses and free stuff you can find when you go to GeraldRogers.com. And I would love to have you follow me on Facebook. Every day I post meaningful, inspired messages on love and life. And my greatest hope is that this is the beginning of a long-term journey where we can, help each other to live the life that we want and that you desire, and to really to live big. And in that space, I believe that the hope for the country lies in the people like you and me stepping up and living powerful, inspired, and conscious lives. We are the hope for the future of this country. And we cannot do this alone. But when we unite as individuals that are like-minded, when we unite as individuals that are looking to live in a positive environment, when we surround ourselves with people that choose to see clearly, then all of a sudden the movement can happen. And my mission is to be just one of the leaders of this movement as we move into the future, because we live in a time of terrible uncertainty. And I know the next 3 to 5 years, a lot is going to be shifting, a lot is going to be happening, a lot of we're going to have to pay the price for a lot of years of unconscious things, whether it be economically or culturally. There's a shift that is coming, and it's going to be extremely hard for anyone who is an unconscious reactor. But for those of you, you and me, that choose to create a better future than the past, then I know we can do this, but it requires us to step up. It requires us to unite. It requires us to stand in this full dimension of our power. And so my invitation once again is for you to go to GeraldRogers.com and join me on this journey. And once again, thank you. And just remember, you've got one life to live. Live big.
All right, Gerald, thank you. I'll be looking for you on Facebook. I'm Free American 69 on Facebook. This show will be up there. You can go there and click on the show with you. It'll actually, in 1 hour, it'll even be up on YouTube. This interview will be up on YouTube. And share it with everybody, folks. You need to know there are answers out there. This ain't a matter of negativity. All the people that are throwing rocks, all the trolls out there, all the doomsdayers, they want you to be afraid. They want you to be afraid. Be very, very afraid. And there's no need for it. Fear destabilizes you. Fear negates your effectiveness. You wanna stay huddled in a corner? Be afraid. Be very, very afraid. But if you want to make changes, you want to turn your life around and turn the way this country's headed around, you do it with love and you do it with positive thoughts and positive action, I believe. Gerald? Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Clay. Take care and have an amazing day.
All right, sir. By the way, you said you were in the mountains. What mountain range are you in?
It's down in southern Utah. It's part of the Rocky Mountains. It's just a beautiful, beautiful cabin down south here, and it's a gorgeous, beautiful day. And I can jump back into the event that I'm at, but it was great to be able to join you from here and share this journey with people in your audience from around the world. So thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right. Now, I got something else that I want to talk about. I'm continuing a series. As a matter of fact, I'm devoting the whole June issue of the Free American magazine. The June issue will be devoted to this subject. We started it yesterday, I believe. We started it yesterday. And we're going to continue with it today. We're going to, yesterday was an overview. Alright, got, alright, looking in the chat room. Yeah, we're talking about Vista and, yep. Ain't gonna go there. Let's do this. I want to talk about who controls the agreed upon reality. Now, this is really a history, and it's we've got it on my Facebook, and it will be up on my site also. We've got 1947, 1954, 1963, 1993, 2001, and 2014. The article is actually from the Disclosure Project. Got a lot of people that are asking the same questions that I've asked. Why is the UFO so top secret? Why are UFOs so top secret? And I've told you it's because they don't want you to know that we have the technology and the ability to go to have lunch on the moon and be back in time for dinner right here without breaking a sweat, without using any a drop of gasoline. Not a drop of gasoline. We're talking about the tachyon magnetic generators powered by mercury. discussed throughout history. And on July 8th, 1947, indications throughout history show that our civilization has been intervened and monitored by advanced off-planet cultures since the beginning of the human race on planet Earth. It appears our detonating of atomic weapons drew their concern around our nuclear weapons facilities. One of these craft apparently flew into a high-powered electromagnetic beam of radar at White Sands and caused one of the ET vehicles to crash outside of Roswell, New Mexico. Note that the Roswell incident was only one of several retrieval operations of crashed ET vehicles. This one just happened to hit the newspapers to grab the public's attention, and the scrutiny of the official cover-up story. The others were able to be kept secret from the public. Now, just so happened, maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's synchronicity. I was born right before this crash, year before, June, and I ended up living at White Sands Missile Range. Matter of fact, one of my neighbors slept through the first atomic bomb blast in his adobe home, and I lived 10 miles from the Trinity site, and I got to go there. I got to see it. Also, I had a father-in-law. More synchronicity going here. I had a father-in-law that was a Marine colonel, and he escorted the alien from Roswell to Truman's office. He was Colonel Lloyd Conrad. Never would appear on my show, didn't want to talk about it. Said he wanted to live. And then we were supposed to have Thanksgiving together. I was late arriving, and they killed him before I got to see him again. Or he died. Don't know who killed him, don't know what happened. This series of articles by a member of the Disclosure Project is pretty extensive. It goes back and covers a wide range of information that should point out to you the UFOs are real, and the real reason they don't want you, I was absolutely accurate, they don't want you to know that we got other power sources, that we got the ability to do this. They don't want you to know. They just don't want you to know that we don't need this gasoline. We don't need the nuclear power plants. And even China is now renewing. They know what that this has, this whole power system, nuclear power, has been instituted to provide weapons of mass destruction for our ruling elite. Thorium plants can generate atomic power, can generate all the energy you need, and you can't make nuclear weapons out of it. So we've been led around a false path here. There was no weather balloon here. General Ramey sent a telegram to the Pentagon and General Hoyt Vandenberg, the acting AAF Chief of Staff at the time. Ramey is providing Vandenberg an update according to computer enhancement technology done in 1909 on the photograph, which was able to decipher the text of the telegram, which in part said that a disc is next new find. He then adds, the victims of the wreck These words would refute the weather balloon cover story. And July 26, 1947, Truman initiates the National Security Act. That same month of the Roswell event, Truman initiates the National Security Act of 1947 and established the National Security Council. James Forrestal was assigned as the first acting Secretary of Defense. And this is after Colonel Lloyd Conrad escorted the alien to Truman's office. Truman started all this because he thought it was a threat. They thought the little gray was a threat. The little gray was telepathic. 1947 National Security Act, the CIA and the NSA means that both the Nazi International and the corporate and banking interests of the USA were not only influential within these organizations, but that those organizations constituted one nexus of interaction between them. In addition, the banking connections already surveyed, the breakaway civilization had, in other words, created its own intelligence group, grafted an already existing Nazi one into it, and created a steady source of funding for it, the American taxpayer. American corporate elite and Nazis were sharing common objectives. On the American side of the equation, the corporate elite viewed itself as the elite of both class and of race, fit to rule over the vast masses of human resource in its corporate empires, while the same attitude prevailed in the Nazism as well. Charles Higham aptly summarizes the ideological commodity. They understood each other's language and their aims were in common. Again, kind of what I've told you, I can't tell you whether the government controls the mafia or the mafia controls the government. Do the Nazis run us? Do the communists run us? Are both Nazism and communism are creation of the bankers? The New World Order is one world government of the bankers, by the bankers, and for the bankers. And is it the Jews? Is it the Jews? Well, you could just as easily say that Rothschilds were Germans. Their little shop with the 666 symbol that makes up the Israeli flag now, the six-pointed star on that Israeli flag, is 666. 6 triangles, 6 points, 6 intersections, 6 sides. 666. The American corporate elites and Nazis sharing common objectives. On the American side, okay, already done that. The Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, was created 2 months later. Rear Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter is assigned as the first director of Central Intelligence. The very compartmentalized structure of American government agencies and intelligence functioned as a way of screening those Nazi programs, cloaking their activities. There were essentially 2 CIAs, the official one which hunted Nazis, and the other unofficial one linked to Wisner and Dulles that recruited them. We also, matter of fact, one of the books talked about the recruitment of Heinrich Müller, who was the head of Gestapo, and he was brought into the United States, and I talked about him some 20 years ago. Here's some quotes by a concerned, wait a minute, two elements, one official, one unofficial. We have these 2 elements active today, only with greater infiltration of their agents than in 1947. Know that there are good people in our government, military, intelligence agents who uphold the principles America was founded upon. So when people say the government is doing this or that, it's more complicated than that. There are elements within the structure that are unwarranted, that are the unwarranted influences that have infiltrated our legal constitutional government. Quotes by concerned Admiral Roscoe Hellencoder. It's time for the truth to be brought out in open congressional hearings. Behind the scenes, high-ranking Air Force officers are soberly concerned about the UFOs, but through official secrecy and ridicule, many citizens are led to believe the unknown flying objects are nonsense. To hide the fact, the Air Force has silenced its personnel. I urge immediate congressional action to reduce the dangers from secrecy about unidentified flying objects. Now, note that he is warning not the dangers of UFOs, or that of disclosure in a congressional hearing, but rather the dangers that existed from continued secrecy from the public and its potential for its abuse. Dr. Stephen Greer has an article on this. You can read it. I'm not going to right now. Now, September 24th, 1947, a Majestic 12, MJ-12 group assigned to handle the UFO ET issue exclusively, General Nathan Twining insist to President Truman that a special secret group be formed to handle the UFO ET issue. General Twining insisted to President Truman that the extraterrestrial issue was bigger than the Manhattan Project and required that it be managed on a larger scale and obviously for a longer period. They would form nothing less than a government within a government, sustaining itself from presidential administration to presidential administration, regardless of whatever political party took power, and ruthlessly guarding their secrets while evaluating every bit of new information on flying saucers they received. But at the same time, they would allow disclosure of some of the most far-fetched information, whether true or not, because it would help create a climate of public attitude that would be able to accept the existence of extraterrestrial life without a general sense of panic. September 19th, 1947, Twining sends a magic security clearance member eyes-only 19-page report, which has been highly authenticated. In this report, it is interesting to note that among other details of the extraterrestrial craft and the pilots that they retrieved, is that an autopsy of the pilots supports the premise that these beings originate from another planet, and that the craft may be a product of an advanced culture from another planet that is much older than ours and has utilized the science and intellect for interplanetary space travel. And being that our culture is relatively young in relation to the cosmic scale, it is possible that other cultures may have developed faster or are much older and have avoided the pitfalls common in our historical and scientific development, and that the laws of physics and genetics may have a genesis in a higher structured order than once previously thought. It was noted that there was no identifiable controlling mechanisms, and the materials of the craft were unknown and were tested and were shown to have incredible properties unknown on Earth. Inside the craft there were no seams or joints, and the smooth surfaces appeared to be molded seamlessly as one unit. It said navigation and engine controls may be activated by tactile manipulation. Viewing may have been achieved by a form of television imagery. Symbolic notation appears to be in the form of light and control indicators. flat panels of unknown metal had been suggested as a device associated with the operation. It was believed that the craft was controlled purely by thought of the pilots, stating that they believed it was a symbiotic relationship between the operator and the functions of the craft's operations, and that pilot interaction may occur via electronic non-word symbols perceived through tactile manipulation of the fingers, feeding impulses to the brain and vice versa, all of which may suggest a non-inert quality of the material's existence as being a to the brain and vice versa, all of which may suggest a non-inert quality of the materials existed as being a product of artificial intelligence. In other words, a conscious interface between the operators and the craft. Now, when I wrote about these crafts 45 years ago, I suggested that the people operating, and these were human lights, not the grays, the human-like operators of the craft did so by telepathy. The grays are telepathic. That was confirmed by Colonel Loy Conrad. It was the opinion that the ability of the armed forces to secure national security would be put in jeopardy and possibly lead to undue public fear and disorder, and that history and religion in the political context would probably suffer the most damage, causing unprecedented upheaval in social and psychological well-being, and that it would be advisable for the respective secretaries of the armed forces to devise a security policy of plausible denial if and when the public becomes aware of the reality of these objects. It was also noted these extraterrestrials were not hostile, in saying so far no hostile action or intent has been observed since they made their presence known. Now, note that this is not the way the extraterrestrials will be depicted in future Hollywood CIA-influenced movie scripts to the public. It concludes, for the well-being of the public, of course, and the protection of national security, that the U.S. must be perceived as being the top of the heap in every effort made to ensure that there is and never was, never has been, a threat to the country. September 24th, 1947. There was a top-secret memo regarding Majestic 12, MJ-12 group. President Truman sends a top-secret memo to Secretary of Defense James Forrestal regarding Operation Majestic 12. Dear Secretary Forrestal, as per our recent conversation on this matter, you are hereby authorized to proceed with all due speed and caution upon your undertaking. Hereafter this matter shall be referred to only as Operation Majestic 12. It continues to be my feeling that any future considerations relative to the ultimate disposition of this matter should rest solely with the office of the President, following appropriate discussions with yourself, Dr. Bush, and the Director of Central Intelligence. That's signed by Harry Truman. On 1948, January 22nd, U.S. Air Force Project Sign to determine origins of UFOs. Project Sign. The U.S. Air Force collects data on the UFOs, includes they are of extraterrestrial origin. The second director of the CIA, General Hoyt S. Vandenberg, rejects this estimate, citing a lack of supporting physical evidence, and orders all copies of the estimate to be destroyed. Obviously, a high-level decision has been made, and this conclusion is not wanted to be known. February 1949, Project Grudge, followed by Project Blue Book, assigned to deny the extraterrestrial evidence to the public. Project Grudge taking over Project Sign and dismissed the previous findings. The choice of the word grudge was described on the new project was deliberate, where the focus turned to a debunking mandate all the reports, Project Grudge ended in late 1951 to be resumed by Project Blue Book in 1952, which continued the debunking till 1969 when it was closed. May 22nd, 1949. James Forrestal, suspected of disclosing to the public, is found dead. James Forrestal experienced a nervous breakdown talking about a Nazi Antarctica base and flying discs to hospital personnel. Is found dead after falling out a hospital window. Disclosure witness Daniel Morris, NRO operative with cosmic level clearance, states that Forrestal was murdered as he was planning on disclosing the issue to the public. And I love one of Forrestal's answers to McCarthy, who said something about the communists being dumb. Forrestal told McCarthy, "Consistency is not the mark of stupidity. If they were just stupid, occasionally they'd make a mistake in our favor." In 1950, March 22nd, SAC to FBI memo claims high-powered radar responsible for the extraterrestrial vehicle crash. Communication to Director FBI from SAC indicates the government has a very high-powered radar set up in that area. It's believed that the radar interferes with the controlling mechanism of the saucers. An investigator of the Air Force stated that 3 so-called flying saucers had been recovered in New Mexico. They were described as being circular in shape with raised centers, approximately 50 feet in diameter. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies of human shape, but only 3 feet tall, dressed in metallic cloth of a very fine structure. Each body was bandaged in a similar manner to the blackout suits used by high-speed flyers and jet pilots. According to an informant, the saucers found in New Mexico due to the fact that the government has very high-powered radar set up in that area. It's believed that the radar interferes with the controlling mechanism. In 1950, a newspaper tabloid owner trained at CIA psychological operations to disseminate discrediting stories on the UFO subject. Generoso Pope Jr. began a year with the psychological warfare section of the CIA to disseminate discrediting stories on the UFO ET subject. In 1952, the year of the famous July sightings over the nation's capital, Mr. Pope bought the New York Enquirer. In 1954, Pope Jr. converted the newspaper to a tabloid and renamed it the National Enquirer. From 1954 to 1966, the Enquirer sold only on newsstands and drugstores, focused on sex, violence, and other salacious material. Its circulation increased to 1 million in 1967, at a time when the U.S. government was initiating a complex process to rid itself of the public's irritating interest in the UFO phenomena. Pope Jr. revamped the National Enquirer, moved aggressively to place it in grocery stores across the country, and added frequent UFO stories to the content. Photos and graphics promoting questionable UFO stories were featured on the covers of the tabloids, seen millions of times by U.S. citizens. In 1979, Pope Jr. launched a weekly world news at the grocery stores, carrying the National Enquirer. For the next 28 years, Americans going to buy groceries were treated to the likes of these stories. Romney voted President of Mars, alien backs Clinton, Rush Limbaugh meets with space alien, Hillary Clinton adopts alien baby, are UFOs abducting cows, men in black suits are hiding in plain sight. The weekly world news became a legend for making up everything while posing as tabloid news. From 1979 through the end of the Cold War, the Clinton administration, and well into the Bush administration, the World Weekly News sat next to the National Enquirer taking over the ET disinformation heavy lifting. It closed down in 2007 and went live as a parody on the internet. Pope Jr. died in 1988, a multi-millionaire. The disinformation division of the truth embargo moved to the internet, working under different perimeters. How many websites the CIA and other agencies control may never be known. The CIA has a term called DDT, decoy, distract, trash. It effectively discredits real UFO news with disinformation, so the public in their mind simply trash the whole concept related to UFOs as seen as nonsense. General Donovan of the CIA suppresses thousands of UFO reports submitted by General Douglas MacArthur's interplanetary phenomena with top-secret gag order. General Douglas MacArthur had amassed so many credible UFO reports that he established his own interplanetary phenomena unit. In fact, MacArthur allegedly had personal contact with extraterrestrials at Clark Airfield in the Philippines in 1945. However, when MacArthur dispatched a file containing these 2,000 reports up the chain of command to Military Intelligence Chief General William Wild Bill Donovan, the reports were completely suppressed. As a result, MacArthur censored all UFO reports throughout his Pacific Command right up until 1951, when he was personally fired by President Harry Truman. Yet despite this embarrassing dismissal and the top-secret gag order, General MacArthur told the New York Times in 1955, "The nations of the world will have to unite, for the next war will be an interplanetary war. The nations of Earth must someday make a common front against attack by people of other planets." In 1950, November 21st, authenticated Canadian top-secret memo validates the existence of the MJ-12 group. The Canadian secret memo by Wilbur Smith validated the MJ-12 group as a key document in which these 5 key areas were outlined about flying saucers that he had discovered while in discussions with top U.S. officials. These were: the matter's most highly classified subject in the United States government, rating higher than even the H-bomb. Flying saucers exist. Their modus operandi is unknown, but concentrated effort is being made by a small group headed by Vannevar Bush. The entire matter is considered by the U.S. authorities to be of tremendous significance, and the United States authorities are investigating quite a number of lines which might be possibly related to the saucers, such as mental phenomena. 1951 media, Hollywood releases the first PSYOPs-influenced movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. This script had been coordinated through CIA, U.S. Air Force psychological operations for the purpose of influencing public's perception of extraterrestrials. All movies of extraterrestrial content to present day have been guided by intelligence agencies, liaisons to the movie industry for this planet. A brief synopsis: the alien visitor lands peacefully in Washington, D.C., where he is greeted with hostility on this primitive and violent planet. Before leaving, he gives the people of Earth an ultimatum regarding their nuclear weapons. "It is no concern of ours how you run your own planet, but if you threaten to extend your violence, this Earth of yours will be reduced to a burned-out cinder. 20th Century Fox production, Chief Gerald Rogers, the man responsible for overseeing the production of The Day the Earth Stood Still, was himself in charge of Army Signal Corps documentary unit during the Second World War, and was, at the time of the movie's production, a board member of the National Committee for Free Europe, which was established by the CIA in 1949. As a star member of the NCFE, Zanuck regularly rubbed shoulders with the organization's executive committee, which included future CIA Director Allen Dulles and future U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower. In 1951, when The Day the Earth Stood Still being written, produced, and released, the president of the NCFE was General Charles Douglas C.D. Jackson, who served as Deputy Chief of the Psychological Warfare Division of the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force during World War II, and would later be appointed as Special Advisor to President Eisenhower on psychological warfare. He was, in the words of historian Francis Stoner Saunders, one of the most influential covert strategists in America. Jackson referred to Gerald Zanuck as being among a group of Hollywood friends, including Jack Warner and Walt Disney, on whom the government could rely to insert in their scripts and in their action the right ideas with the proper subtlety. Hollywood movies are an important part of the PSYOPs operation to understand. It is the only indoctrination of the public on the reality of extraterrestrial life. The Day the Earth Stood Still is the first of many extraterrestrial movies in which the U.S. Air Force and CIA provided the script to the movie industry, as 13th CIA Director William Casey revealed to President Reagan. Science fiction entertainment for many decades has been indoctrinating the imaginations of the people of Earth through the media what interaction with life on other planets would be like. Imagine if the first children that were watching those science fiction movies in the 50s, which sparked their imagination for the first time about the reality of extraterrestrial, had any idea while they were watching these movies that hidden from them was another reality that was not science fiction and quite different than portrayed by Hollywood movies back then, and even more so today. A reality that, if disclosed to the public, would have radically changed the world they lived in forever. Are these extraterrestrials hostile? This is simply answered by the fact that we are still alive here on Earth. The ETs that have been visiting us long before we had atomic weaponry, and they could have then, as they could now, with their advanced weaponry, annihilate the human race without a challenge. All of the fears regarding these stories of abduction and cattle mutilations have more of an actual association with paramilitary operations right here on Earth, testified by witnesses that have been in these operations. Nevertheless, our view of life from space is filled with haunting images of evil aliens wanting to take over Earth and destroy us all, as portrayed in our movies. Evidence shows we should be more concerned about secret control elements operating on Earth, influencing the science fiction extraterrestrial movies in Hollywood than the ETs. A history of government management of UFO perceptions through film and television. In 2011, a paper written by Robbie Graham from the University of Bristol and Matthew Alford, PhD, from the University of Bath, in which they conclude the pattern of the U.S. government's perception management relating to UFO-based entertainment is hitherto barely known and under-researched. Overall, this pattern indicates that for over 6 decades, national security institutions, or at least powerful factions within them, in contrast to their publicly stated disinterest in UFOs, have closely observed and altered television and film depictions of the phenomena, typically in line with broader government objectives in an attempt to prevent USOs from gaining a greater legitimacy or political currency. July 12, 1952, we got a film here. of UFOs flying over the Capitol in Washington, D.C. William B. Smith of the 4th CIA DCI writes the following memo stating the UFO issue to have implications for psychological warfare. He says, I am today transmitting to the National Security Council a proposal in which it is concluded that the problems connected with unidentified flying objects appear to have high implications for psychological warfare as well as for intelligence and operations. I suggest that we discuss at an early board meeting the possibility of offensive or defensive utilization of these phenomena for psychological warfare purposes. That was William Smith, Director. Now, what's meant by psychological warfare? The modern definition is the planned use of propaganda and other psychological actions to have the primary purpose of influencing the opinions, emotions, attitudes, and behavior of hostile foreign groups in such a way as to support achievement of national objectives. This is understandable also to maintain secrecy. But what if our national security becomes infiltrated by an unwarranted influence and compromise so that it does not support the achievement of our constitutional government's national objectives? 1952, November 4th, creation of the National Security Agency. President Truman created that in 1952. In 1964, Project Echelon used keywords to monitor communications globally. The NSA played a key role in expanding America's commitment to the Vietnam War in 1964, regards to the intelligence on the Gulf of Tonkin event. On the 2005, December 16th, the Bush administration, using presidential executive authority to override citizens' constitutional rights to privacy, authorized warrantless domestic wiretaps, justified by the war on terror initiated by the 9/11 event. This actually happened before that. If you remember, in 2004, April of 2004, the story broke in New York Times that Bush had authorized the NSA to tap everybody's phones. And those phones that were tapped, mine being one of the first, I guess, was done by two Israeli-based companies, Amdocs and Converse. Not to make this a Jewish plot, but Israel has been used as a safe country, plausible deniability, and Israel can violate your constitutional rights, can it? On May 16, 2013, the NSA surveillance is to be turned over to artificial intelligence machines. Now that a 512-qubit quantum computing computer has been achieved, the D-Wave 2 quantum computer has been selected for the new Quantum Artificial Intelligence Initiative. With this enormously huge quantum leak and processing power, the NSA wants to eliminate human analysts and replace them with self-learning AI machines running on neural networks of quantum computing processors. This quantum artificial intelligence spy computer is an expert in parsing human speech, analyzing voice stress, and building maps of human communication reports. Before long, the quantum AI system will surpass anything a human brain can comprehend, so they may possibly take the humans out of the AI system, out of the loop, and put the quantum computers in charge. A computing system that can decide who are the bad guys versus the good guys according to the program criteria. It has access and control over every communication on the planet, every webcam, every microphone, smartphone, computer, traffic lights, airplanes, vehicles, and website postings. You can imagine if this level of surveillance using quantum computer processing were to fall in the wrong hands or unwarranted influences, as Eisenhower warned, then those who would be a threat to the agenda could be quickly identified and cataloged. This is literally a quantum leap from computer punch cards provided by IBM in the 40s for the Nazi concentration camps. People in high executive management positions in government intelligence, military, or corporate could be potentially blackmailed with collected data to be replaced by someone in alignment with their agenda. It is not a far cry of the imagination that the quantum processing ability of AI could be invaluable as a tool to analyze on a massive, large scale the entire population's reactions to psychological operations done in the mainstream media. This would give the PSYOP think tanks the important feedback they need to observe the reactions and to plan the next psychological approach in the engineering of consent to effectively address the masses in a way that would support the given agenda while knowing pretty accurately that on a large scale what the public reaction to their psychological operations. On 2013 in June, NSA contractor Edward Snowden leaked thousands of NSA documents saying his sole motive was, in his words, to inform the public as to that which is done in their name and that which is done against them. Back in 1952, President-elect Eisenhower received his MJ-12 briefing on the UFO ET matter. Says Majestic 12 is a top-secret research, development, intelligence operation responsible directly and only to the President of the United States. Operations of the project are carried out under the control of Majestic 12 Group, which was established by a special classified executive order of President Truman on the 24th of September 1947 upon recommendation by Dr. Vannevar Bush and Secretary James Forrestal. Now, the Eisenhower's administration assigned John Dulles as Secretary of State and his Nazi recruiting brother Allen Dulles as Director of CIA. Allen Dulles is assigned as the 5th DCI as Eisenhower takes office. He's the longest-serving DSI and supervises Operation Mockingbird, used for psychological operations through relations with the mainstream media. He served from February 1953 to November 1961, when he's fired by JFK for his involvement with a great deal of suspicious actions and groups. He was an attorney representing the Schroeder Bank, which was funded the Nazis, and was a member of the CFR, who also had ties with Prescott Bush and George H.W. Bush of the Union Banking Corporation, with more ties to the Nazis. He's also the creator of the top-secret mind control program, MK Ultra. He also warned off the in-person scientists attempting to discredit contacting George Adamaski, who was working with the CIA to promote disinformation and engage and gather information on how easy it is to fool the public regarding the extraterrestrial reality. And January 14th, 1953, the Robertson panel formed by the CIA to deny UFO reality. That was a committee commissioned by the Central Intelligence Agency in 1952 in responses to widespread unidentified flying object report. This panel was briefed by U.S. military activities and intelligence. Hence, the report was originally classified secret. Later declassified, the Robertson panel reported that most UFO reports could be explained as misidentification of mundane aerial objects, and the remaining minority could in all likelihood be similarly explained with further study. Their official recommendation was that the national security agencies take immediate steps to strip the unidentified flying objects of the special status they have been given. Now, show's almost over here, folks. I need your support. I need your help to keep this investigation going, to keep this show operational. I need some donations. I've got some bills that I got to pay, some work I need done, and I need the money.
I talked to a guy called